once you've logged into the system, the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to go to the fundraising tab and you're going to select TeamRaiser. This is where you're going to edit your event. So by clicking the TeamRaiser, you're going to be routed into this area here that has an event entry for each hike event that you've held in the past. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to find the hike site that's relevant for you this year, and then you're going to see in the actions column these different options. So in this case, the one that we're going to be concerned about is edit. Later on, we'll get down and we'll talk about the manage, but for now, we're going to edit our event. So you're going to click into the edit, and you're going to be taken to this particular site here. So what you need to be concerned with here, or pay attention to, is down the left-hand side, you're going to see this numbered list. So each one of these areas is going to impact a different spot or a different function of your hike site. So we'll go through sort of systematically as to which areas you should change. And just note that not everything in this back end area we are going to change. So some things I'll spend a little bit more time on than other things. And we'll actually loop back around and talk about some of the bigger pieces after we take care of just sort of the overall setting up of your site. So just to know, a lot of the information that you provided me during the registration has already been populated into this site. So some of the pieces that you see that are in here are completely customizable, but have already been populated with the information that you've given me. So if you've changed your mind or if you need things updated, it's totally possible and something that you can do yourself. You don't actually have to pull the CHPCA coordinator in on it because it's something that that's pretty straightforward for the most part. We'll talk about a few areas that we won't change in the tutorial, but that you have the option to if you as a hike site decide that that's what you want. So we'll get into those areas as we come across them. But for now, we'll just leave it alone and we'll move on. So number one that you see here is the Identify TeamRaiser. So when you look into the center of the page, you see that there's a numbered list of each of the action items inside of these particular lists. So in this case, the number one under the first action item, which is Identify TeamRaiser, is the administrative name. So what you need to know about the administrative name is that this is something that is only seen in the back end. Your users can't see this. So what this is to differentiate your hike in the back end from this year or last year or all the years moving forward. So the best naming convention you can do is the way I've already set it up for you, which is generally your site's name and the year. So when you're looking in that list that we saw in the step before, you'll be able to easily identify what was this year's hike versus what was last year's hike. So this is something that you should leave alone, or if you've already changed it, just tag in that you want whatever the current year is to be in there. So for now, we'll leave it as is because in my example here, it's good. It identifies our event and our year, and that's all we really need. Number two is the public name. So this is what your hike sites will see. So this is something that when someone is doing a search to see what hike site they want to join up with, it's whatever they're going to type in that's going to come up with a match close to yours. So in this example, if a person was searching for the Hike for Hospice 2017 training site, they could type in any of those combinations of words and come up with this particular site. So you can change this to be whatever makes sense to your organization. But I strongly recommend that you actually have the organization name in there. And from there, you can change whether you want to have Hike for Hospice in there or not, whether you want the year to be in there or not. But the most important thing that you can do is leave your organization's name in there, because what most people do when they're searching for a site is try and find one in their closest city. And if you're typing in that city, you want it to come up, or they're looking for a hospice name. So if they want your hospice to show up, you've got to have that in there. So just whatever makes sense for what your site is going to be. The description area here is totally optional, but this is going to help people find you in a search engine like Google. So if you type in here just a little bit of information, it shouldn't be very long, just a sentence or two, just describing your hike. So you might want to put in there something about the date of your hike, the year of your hike, where your hike is going to be, the overall name of your hike, stuff like that. So just stuff that if you were doing a logical search into Google, it would make it easy for the search engine to pull that information and spit it back to your users. What you need to be concerned with on both of these is if you're a bilingual site, you'll see that above each of these names, areas rather, is an English and a French button. If you're a bilingual site, you need to toggle back and forth between those to change the language. So if, for example, you want a description in English, you would want the equivalent description in French. So you would need to be pressing those and making sure that you're updating them simultaneously. The security category should already be set for you. This is something that I would have set up for you. It's very, very important that you actually have your security category in here, because later on this is going to link up with how you pull your reports. So if this says anything other than what seems logical to have been your site, which generally the naming convention is something to do with your organization, then it's good to go. But if it says general or anything that seems really really out of character for what your organization is, you should get in contact with the CHPCA hike coordinator and we'll make that change for you. The event date can also be tweaked here. So we've populated it with the event date that's the actual hike, or if you've indicated to us that you're holding it on a different day and you've received permission for that, we've put in whatever the day is that you've indicated. But this is something that can be tweaked if need be, and we can go forward from there. And it's important that you actually populate it in this area because it does pull for information that shows on the front end of your hike site. The fiscal year is something that we don't really use, so we'll just skip that. But the next one under number 7 here is previous event association. This is important. You should have this linked up to your last year's event. This is also something that's going to be relevant for when you're pulling reports. So this is going to enable you to do a comparison from what you have this year to last year. And it's also going to make a difference when you're actually using the feature to send out emails to your past hikers and your past fundraisers, which is something we'll talk about a little later on. So we've now transitioned into the second area, which is select fundraising options. So again, similar to what we saw in the previous step, a lot of this information has already been populated for you and you don't need to do anything, but there are a few things that you might want to do here. So in number 1, which is the donation form, this has already been created for you. So this is something that the CHPCA would have completed for you, and you don't need to do anything with it other than to make sure that whatever's written in the donation form area seems to make sense for your site. So similar to the security categories, it's been named with your organization or something that really would be very specific to you. If it doesn't have anything, or if it seems like it's not pulling the right information, get in contact with the CHPCA, because this is important to make sure that the money is actually going to be allocated to your particular site. But in this case, I know it's been set up that in every case your donation form is already there. The fundraising goal has already been populated based on the information that you've given us, but there are certain circumstances where you may want to change this. So it has happened in the past where a site has actually met their fundraising goal, and instead of leaving it as having surpassed their goal, which shows up on the front end, they want to increase their fundraising goal. It just gives your hikers something to continue to strive for, as opposed to saying we already met our goal and we're not, it makes it seem like there's still a ways to go versus our active fundraising involvement is done. So this is something that's good to keep an eye on. So you'll need to manage just sort of this piece on the front end of your website, and then come and make sure that it's reflecting accurately in this particular area. The additional donation with registration is something that we want to leave. This means that when your hikers are signing up or registering on the front end of the site, they have the option to make a donation to themselves. So say for example, you have a hiker that wants to donate or wants to fundraise and raise $1,000, and they want to donate to themselves $100. This is a good thing to encourage people, actually, because it's sort of like seeding their account. So once they have something to go off of, it's easier for people to sort of make an equivalent donation. So this is something that a lot of hikers actually appreciate being able to do. So by leaving this checked, this is something that keeps that as an option for your hikers. The registration donation levels, we're going to leave it alone here. This is something that we've actually included in the donation form, so it doesn't need to be done again here, so we can just move on and not worry too much about this. The tax ID site is where you would populate in your CRA charitable number. So this is important because this actually links up to your tax receipts. So if you don't have the correct information in here, the information that's getting sent out on your tax receipts is not correct. It makes your tax receipts not valid. So that's not something that we want. So make sure that you're actually putting in the correct ID there, the correct CRA number. In this case, I've actually already populated it for everyone, but just to note that it's something to keep an eye on, that you might want to give it a double check and just make sure that it is actually correct. So you've now transitioned into area number 3, which is select event options. Now in this case, we're going to leave number 1 and number 2 as being switched on, because these are things that we want to have our participants have access to. So this is something that is impacting their participant center, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But the participant center gift status and the participant fundraising goal, we want to leave them alone. So we'll not spend too much time on those areas. But number 3 and number 4, so these are goals that we've recommended. This is totally optional based on your site. You may want to raise this number or lower this number, but I wouldn't worry about it too much in this particular area, because there is another area where this actually can be changed as well. And that area makes more sense than even here, because it will impact every type of registration you have versus what you're seeing here, which is just an overall amount. So we can leave it as 200 and 1,000. Just know that if it makes a difference to change it, we'll probably do it in the other area, which is something that we'll talk about in another step. So for now, I'm just going to move on from those, but just to keep in mind that you can come back to these if needed. Interest categories we don't use, so we're not going to talk about that. And event affiliation is also something we don't use. The registration limit type is something that traditionally we don't have to worry about, but there may be a case where you want to look at this, mostly because our hike is an outdoor event. It's, everybody is welcome, but there may be a case where at some point you're holding a hike that's an indoor event and you can only have a certain capacity or a certain amount of people. You might want to limit the amount of registrations that your hike will allow. In this case, I'm not going to change anything here because the majority of you, that's not going to be the case, and we'll just leave it as is. So the second area under the related actions that we're going to talk about is the identify location details. So once you click into here, you're going to see a couple of different things. This is technically where you're going to put the address information about your hike and your organization as well. So this information is relevant because when someone is doing a search for you by province or by city, this is how they're going to be able to generate those search results. It's also pulling this information from this area to populate on the front end of your page. So it's really important that you actually keep this area populated and make sure that it's correct. So in this case, I've used the information provided on your registration forms and already gone ahead and populated it. But if it's something that needs to be changed, it is a good idea to come in here and kind of go through this step just to double check to make sure that what you have is actually correct. So you'll see as you scroll down the page, the top is your location information. And as you get down towards the bottom, it talks about your office information. So this is the difference between your hike site location information and your office information, your organization's information. So in this case, I've populated it with your organization's information, but you can actually go back and change the information at the top to be your hike site specific information. But just know that the most important thing is actually the city and the province, because this is again linking up to your search fields. It's not so much important that you have the street address and whatnot, because we put this information in a different area that we'll talk about a little later on. Once you've updated your address information in here, the only thing you're going to need to do is click Finished, and you'll actually be rerouted back to the Select Event Options area where you started. So also in this section, you need to be aware of down the left-hand menu, there are some related action items. So a couple of these areas are important because they can impact the way people search for your site or some of the functions that are happening on your site. So this is something that generally once you set up once, you don't need to go back in and do it again. But it is good to know that these exist in case you have some changes that need to be made. So the first area that I'm going to show you is the Edit Advanced options. So once you click into here, you're going to be rerouted to this page. You'll see that this page is blank. That's okay. We're just going to transition through this by hitting Next. So there's only really one area in here that's really important to impacting how your hike is going to be run, and that's this sender email address. So this particular area should always be populated with your hike coordinator's email. So what this information is affecting is anytime an email gets sent out from the system, so a coaching email or emails that get sent out from the participant centers or your thank you for registering, those kinds of emails, anything that automatically gets generated from the system, this is the email address in which it will show that it's being sent from. So this also means that should one of your hikers or donors or whatever the case may be reply to that email, it will actually reply to the email address that you're putting into this particular area. So this is important to know, because this is how people will be able to get in touch with the right person where the activities of your hike are concerned. So in this case, I've left it blank, but I've already populated your sites, so you should see your hike coordinator in there. But should that information change halfway through the year, or someone else decides that they want to take on that task, just know that you can come into this particular area and edit that. So after populating your sender email address, you'll notice that there's a lot of other information in this area. So some of these have check marks, some of them don't have check marks. I've gone ahead and I've set it up the way that our site functions the best, but there are a couple of things that you may or may not want to actually change. So I'm not going to go into these details, but just know that you can kind of look through these and see if there are some things that might make more sense for your site. Just know that because it's an option in here doesn't necessarily mean it's something our site is set up to capably do. So if it's unchecked, there's probably a reason why it's unchecked. But you can always talk to the CHPCA's hike coordinator, and if it's something that is possible to do, we'll advise you on that, and then you can go forward. So when you're done with this particular page, you're just going to scroll all the way down to the bottom, and you're going to click Save. Or if you wanted to go on to the next step, you could just hit next. And I believe there's 4 different pages that you can go through with these types of information. Just so you can transition through these by hitting next each time. So just know that in this case, we're only concerned with that one area. So we're going to hit save. And then we're actually going to come back up here to the left-hand side, and we're going to click into number 3 again to take us back to where we started. So we want to go back into the select event options, scroll all the way down to the bottom again where we can see the related actions, and then we're going to go into the next area to talk about it. So you've transitioned now into item number 4, which is select team options. So in this case, there are some things that you might want to change, but for the most part, we've already set it up the way that most sites would want it to be. So in number 1, you have the option of defining a team size. So there are a few hike sites out there that limit the amount of people that can be on a team. It doesn't happen very often, but for certain reasons you may want it to be that a maximum amount of people can join a team. So if that's the case for your site, you can put that number in there. If not, just leave it blank and it'll allow an unlimited amount of people to join a specific team. Password protected teams is, when toggled on, allows the option of your team captains to create a password that they then provide to anybody that they want to give permission to join their team. It's an optional thing for the user, but lots of times people actually like that option because it prevents a stranger from joining their team. So if they want to leave it so that their team maybe is for family members only, or for certain organization employees only, they can use this password as a way to prevent others from actually joining their team inadvertently, or trying to join in that team thinking it's an open or public team. It happens occasionally that's what happens, and in this case it just limits those possibilities. Again, it's not something that your hikers have to assign, but it does give them the option to. Company association, we are going to leave on. This is something that is important because we like to encourage organizations to be sending their hikers to your particular their employees rather to your particular hike, and this gives them the ability to sort of collectively subscribe to the fact that they are coming as a company. It's a way also for them to generate some friendly competition because it actually attributes that information to their particular organization. So in this case, we're going to leave it toggled on. We're going to leave the other 2 as they are as well. The company selection, we're going to leave unchecked, and the team gifts, we're going to leave on as well. The team gifts is something that if you really had a problem and did not want to have this on, you could actually consider turning it off. But there are a lot of practical applications to allowing people to donate to a team as opposed to an individual. This happens a lot when you get family teams hiking, where a particular family member doesn't necessarily want to make a donation to more than one person, but they don't want to choose who the person is that gets the donation. So instead they donate to the team versus a specific individual. So it's something that's good. It has practical applications, but at the same time, there are some times where having team gifts can be somewhat confusing, but it's just really good practice to explain to your hikers and your donors what this means, and try and encourage them to send out the information about their personal sites versus their team site. But again, it's a personal preference thing, so you can think about that and make that decision for yourselves. So we've now transitioned on to item 5 on the list down the left-hand side, which is team divisions. Now, when you get onto this page, you're going to see this message saying that the page is intentionally blank. That's okay. It's that we don't use this particular piece of information, so we've left it so that there's nothing there. All you're going to need to do from this point is just click next to move on to the next step. So now on to item number 6, which is associate upsells. We don't actually have this module, so it's not something that we can use. We're just going to hit next through this screen as well. So area number 7 is the manage participation types. This is one of the biggest areas that you're going to work in the back end of the system. So this is the types of hikers that you're going to have for your particular hike. So in this case, we've already created a bit of a list of different types of hikers that you may choose to use. You don't have to use these, they're just suggestions, but I think you'll find that the majority of participation types that you can think of are actually already in this list. So assuming that you want to have more than one particular registration type, what you need to know is that you have to do the steps that I'm going to show you for each particular registration type that you're going to do. So in this case, I will show you just one, and we're going to use the example of having just a regular hiker. So you can see down, I've scrolled down the list and I can find hiker in the list. Instead of creating a new hiker type, all I'm going to do is just click edit. So after hitting edit in the last screen, you're routed to this screen here, where through the next several screens you're going to see there's a number of instructions that you need to follow to set up this particular participation type. So the first thing that you need to do is put in the name of the participation type. In this case, we just want hiker. So this is going to be any particular hiker. We don't want our hike in this example to have a division between an adult hiker and a child hiker or a senior hiker. We're just going to have one simple registration type. So we're going to leave that as hiker. Again, toggle back and forth between English and French if you're a bilingual site. Number 2 is a description of this participation type. So this is going to show up on the front end of the screen as a little bit of a description so that your participants know what that means to sign up for that particular participation type. In this case, we're just going to leave it as the simple any hiker regardless of age. If we had an adult hiker, for example, we may want to put that it's hikers between the ages of 18 and 65, or whatever the case may be, just so that it gives your participants a little bit of an idea of what they need to sign up for. If you have a registration fee for this hike or for this participant type, you would put it in the area for number 3. So if you're having different participant types and you want different registration fees, this can be different for each of those. So maybe you have in your site an adult hiker and a child hiker. You want your adult hikers to be $20. You want your child hikers to be $10. So just know that you can do this division depending on how you've set up your sites. Number 4, we don't put anything in there. It just stays blank. Tax deductible amount for registration fees isn't something that we do here. So we're going to skip down to number 5. This participation type definitely does involve fundraising. We want the participants who are registering for this particular type to be able to fundraise. There may be a case where you don't want this toggled on, but in this case and in the majority of cases, you're going to leave it on. Number 6 is a minimum fundraising goal. So this is where we talked about on a different screen where you could allocate the minimum fundraising goal that would show up on the registrant site. So in this case, instead of having the 200, which we left in that screen before, maybe we want to make the minimum fundraising goal for this particular type 500. So in this case, if I type in 500, it's going to show up on the registration type or on the registration area as a $500 goal. Doesn't mean that they have to meet that goal. It's just a suggestion. So in this case, because you're putting it here versus the other area, it's more of a weighted suggestion. So in terms of if you want a particular registration type to have a required fundraising amount, this is where you would use this. So for example, if you want to waive your registration fee and instead have your hiker raise a certain amount of money by fundraising, then what you would do is put in the minimum fundraising goal and leave the registration fee blank. The delayed self-pledge enabled is, as it says below, this is a new item here this year that shows that you can actually charge the participants the difference between the delayed self amount that they put in, the minimum fundraising goal, and what they've actually raised. So if you want to make it so that that your participants actually have to pay the difference if they don't raise that amount, you can toggle that on. So after hitting next, you're routed into this screen here. Number 1 is the promotion code. We don't actually use this promotion code, so you're going to leave it blank. A promotion code, in the sense of the word that you might be familiar with, if you want to allow someone to have a discount, we can manage that in the manage discounts area of the site, which is number 9. We're not going to manage it under the participation types, so we'll just ignore it here. Number 2 is the most important question on this particular page. This is where you select to make this participation type active or inactive. So if you want this to be a participation type that people can sign up for, you have to make sure that you click the active radio button that's beside that. Race number generation is not something that we traditionally do, but if for some reason you want to actually have the site generate a specific number for your participants, you can go ahead and put that in there. In this case, I'm going to skip it because it's not something that we traditionally do for the hike. Number 4 is an area where you can put an email address that you get notified of anybody who registers for this participation type. So maybe you want to keep a more active eye on your registrants, and this is one way to do it. Number 5 is participant search and display options. So in this case, we just have the use my first and last name option toggled, but you can click the other two. So this gives your participants the option of, in their participation center, selecting how it is that they show up. Maybe you have a hiker that doesn't want to be able to be found in any way on the site, and you want to give them the option of choosing to be kept anonymous or choosing to just have a screen name. Those are options that you can do too. So just know that that's completely customizable based on your specifications, but we're going to leave it for now just as use my first and last name. That way it's pretty easy for your donors to actually find who your hikers are to make a donation to them. So after hitting next, you're routed into the next area, which is the registration info. So this is the information that's going to show up on your registration form. So you can see in number 1, you have a number of different participation information and check boxes beside them. So this is information that you can elect to have on your registration form or not, depending on whatever you want. So maybe you want to make sure that you get their address or their phone number or their date of birth. Maybe it's not so important for you to have some of that information, and that's totally yours to customize. So to turn it on, you would put the check mark in the box in the column called primary requested. In the second option, you would have primary required. So if that option is checked off, it means that the participant is required to fill it out. So this is totally customizable based on what you guys need to have as information collected, and anything that you don't want, you can just leave unchecked. In the middle there, you're going to see the mail preferences. You want to keep the postal opt-in as requested and opt-in by default. We'll just leave that the way it is there now, and we don't need to worry about that too much. And then the email opt-in that you see below that, question number 2. We're going to leave it set up just like this. And you'll see that in your particular sites, the custom opt-in text likely has already been filled in. But if not, it's always a good idea to write something in there like, yes, I would like to receive email from, and the name of enter in the name of your association right now. So this gives the participants the option on the registration type to sign up to receive your emails, and it's basically going to populate the text saying that yes, they want to receive emails from your site. It's just one way of making it a little bit more customizable than it has been in the past, where it's just been yes, I would like to receive email. So that's something that you should actually be doing. After hitting next, you're routed to the area where you can customize the waiver. So we've already populated in some text here for the waiver, but you can completely customize it to make sure that your own information is in there, or if you have something specific that you want it to say, that's up to you. You can also notice in question number 1 that you can toggle this waiver on and off. So maybe you have a specific instance where you don't need a waiver. Whatever that may be, you can choose to put it on or off, but it's always a good idea to leave it on and actually have a correct waiver in there that's going to cover all the terms that you need for your hike. The next area is to add a banner image. So you can add a specific little image for each participation type. This is something that's completely optional. We don't populate this, but it might be something that you would want to. So if this sounds like something you'd like to do, feel free to put this in there. Just know that that you have to keep your photographs relatively small, because you don't want this to be something that's overwhelming to the eye for the registrants when they're looking at your participation types. So the next area is include upsells. Again, this is something that we don't have the capability of doing, so you're just going to leave this blank and click next. The last area in the setting up a participant type is to add questions. So these are additional questions that you can ask as a part of the registration. So there's only one question in here that's extremely important, and that's the first one, the preferred language. This allows your users to select between English and French. So if you're a bilingual site, it's particularly imperative that you leave that particular question on. To include the question, just make sure that the check mark is selected in the include this question column. Otherwise, if you don't want it included, make sure that it's unchecked. In this case, we've selected a few different questions that we would like included in our participation type. We don't have to have these. It's just optional. And if we wanted to, we could even come up to the top, click the Add a Question button, and add a new question. So maybe you have a particular question about food options. If you offer a barbecue, maybe you'd like to know whether someone wants a hamburger or a hot dog. So that's something that you could do by adding that particular question. So really, this is completely up to you guys and what you include on your sites. So know that this is an option, and anything that you do in this particular area, if you want it to be included in each of your participant types, again, you have to make sure that you come in to the different areas, the different participation types, and select these off manually. So when you're finished here, all you have to do is hit save and then finish, and it will take you back to your managed participation types, where you can do these steps over again with each particular participation type that you'd like. So I'm going to hit finish, and it will take us back to the next area, where I'm going to show you what to do if the participation type you want is not already in the list of provided participation types. So you're back in the participation type listing, where you can see all of the different participation types that we've provided, but there may be a time where you have a particular participation type that you want that isn't included in this list. So you have the option up at the top to click that create a new participation type button, which is fine to do, but I actually recommend that instead of doing that, you create a copy of an existing participation type. This is actually a lot easier because the relevant information will be carried over from the copy into the new site. So in this case, I'm just going to show you an example of what this would look like. So say you wanted a participation type for an out-of-town hiker. So I'm just going to come into the list and I'm going to find a participation type that's relatively similar. In this case, I'll just choose plain regular hiker. And in this case, I'll click copy. It's going to take me into this new area where I'm going to be able to name this. So in this case, I'm just picking a random participation type. So I'll call it out of town hiker. And then I'm going to click finished. You'll see that you're taken back to the list of hikers that you've seen before, but this time, if you scroll all the way down to the bottom, you'll see that your new participation type is already there. In which case you can click the edit button and go through the same steps that we just went through to set up your hike site and change what needs to be changed to reflect the new hiker type, the new participation type. When you're finished here, all you need to do is click save and click next. We're now transitioned on to manage milestones, which is number 8 on the list down the left-hand side. This is also something that we don't use, so we're just going to hit next through this screen as well. So now you've transitioned on to number 9, which is managing discounts. A discount is like a promotional code that you can provide to certain hikers or registrants to allow them a certain either discount or a fixed amount off of your registration fee. If you don't have a registration fee with your hike, it's okay to leave this blank. Or if you don't want to use a discount code, it's okay to leave it blank, but there are a few practical applications where you might like to do this. One being the discount for a staff or possibly managing your early bird registration. Creating a new discount code is easy. All you need to do is go up here, click the green Create a New Discount button, and you'll be rerouted to the page where you can define the terms of the new discount code. So in this example, we'll create a code that's to allow your volunteers free registration. So you click in here. This is where you can name your promo code. This is an administrative name, so it doesn't matter too much what you call this. In this case, I'll just type in volunteers. The next one is where you would provide a brief description, just to remind you what this promo code is for. So I'll just say free registration for volunteers. This area here, number 3, is where you would actually type in the code or the word that you will want your participants to use when they're actually trying to sign up. So I'm just going to use the word volunteer here as well. This is the word that I will actually give all of my volunteers and tell them to use on the front end of the site. Your administrative security category should be set to your particular sites, but if it's not, contact the CHPCA Hike Coordinator and we'll fix that up for you. When you're done here, just click Save and then Next. In the next step, you have to identify what the amount of your discount is going to be. So there's 2 ways that you can do that. You can do it by a percentage, meaning you want to allow 100% off or 50% off, or a fixed amount, which is a dollar amount. So if you wanted to give a $5 off of your registration, for example, you would use the fixed amount. In this case, we're going to leave it as percentage because we know we want it to be free, so that's a 100% discount. In the discount percentage amount, this is where we would type the actual percentage that we would want to allow off. We're not going to put the percent sign. We're just going to leave the number as a whole. After clicking Save and Next on the last page, you're rerouted into this page, which is where you can define if you're going to have a limited amount of discount codes. So maybe you're going to be creating a code where you only want to allow 10 people to register for that using that particular promo code. In this case, we want all of our volunteers to be able to use this code, so we're not going to define that number, but just know that this is a possibility. When you're done, click Save and Next. Once your discount code has been created and associated, all you're going to need to do now is click Next. But just remember, you can add as many discount codes as you need based on your site specifications. Item number 10 on the list is Manage Stationery. This is actually something that's already been done in a different area, so we don't need to do anything in here. So we're just going to scroll down to the bottom and hit Next again. So number 11 in the list is Manage Autoresponders. Now, autoresponder is an email that gets automatically generated by the system after a certain trigger. So these triggers can either be that a participant has registered, or they've made a donation, a certain time period has gone by. Whatever the situation may be, one of these particular autoresponders has been created and is able to be automatically sent out by the system. So in this case, you have the capability of editing some of these autoresponders. So to do an edit, all you would need to do would be to click in the edit button here. You'll notice a second screen will come up and information will be available to populate in here. So the thing that's important to change here is the sender email address. So the same as what you had in an earlier step, you need to actually update this. So so put this as your primary hike coordinator, and you can change the autoresponder's subject line, the sender name. The stationery we're going to leave is the Hike for Hospice stationery that's called the revised design. That's the new design elements that we're going to continue with from here on forward. And then once you're done that, you're just going to hit Next. From there, you're going to see this particular screen pop up. This is the HTML information. So anytime you want to work in these boxes that pop up, just know that there's these three little lines down in the bottom right-hand corner that if you hover your mouse over that area, you'll see a double-headed arrow. All you want to do is click while that double-headed arrow is on there and pull that box out. It actually stretches the box out and gives you some more space so that you can see what's in there. So you can customize this to say whatever it is that you'd like to say, provided that it's similar to what the content already is in there, because this autoresponder is actually designed to be triggered at a certain point, and you want to make sure that what it's triggered for is actually what the content of the email is about. So when you're done that, click Save and click Next. I'm not going to click Save because I haven't made any changes, so there's no point. So I'm just going to hit Next. Now this is where you would update plain text. So HTML and plain text are two options that your hikers have of signing up to receive communications from. So your HTML is more of a fancy element of an email that can go out. It means that it will be accompanied by any photos or headers or stationaries or anything like that, whereas the plain text is just going to be that. It's just going to be stripped down text. Individuals who have slower internet connections often opt for a plain text version email versus those who are using a higher speed internet. They would rather have the HTML. It's not something that's applicable for the majority of people, but it is still something that's necessary just in case. So the easiest way to take care of this is actually just to hit the update plain text button, but it may be a case that you would actually have to make some tweaks in there, particularly if you've put in a link. You have to make sure that the link text is showing and not just please click here and then have the link hidden. So we'll leave that there. If you have any more questions about that, just know that you can reach out to the CHPCA's hike coordinator. We'll help you with the plain text version of things. But for now, we'll just hit next. This is something that you can add in for event manager text, but it's not really necessary, so I'm not even going to talk about that. It's just more or less a bit of an add-on piece if you wanted to add a bit of a personal touch. It's something that exists there as an option, but in the majority of cases, you're not going to want to do that. So once you're finished, you're just going to click Finish, and that's how you would edit one of these particular emails. There's also the option of disabling some of these emails. And all you would have to do there is just hit this disable button. Just know that there are some of these emails that are crucial, so you can't disable them. So things like the thank you for registering, or the thank you for your gift, or anything that seems like it's generating an email based on an action that the hiker or donor is going to take should be left alone. Again, you can edit the content a little bit to make it more personal, but in terms of actually disabling it, please don't do that. And when you're finished there, all you're going to have to do is hit next to move on to the next step. So number 12 in the customize suggested messages. So these messages are actually the messages that appear in the participant center. So the participant center is the area that's assigned to each of your hikers when they've registered. This is where they manage the activities of their hike. So when they go into their participant center, one of the features of that area is that they have the ability to use customized messages that you've already created as a simple way of creating emails to send to their friends and family asking for different things. So it can either be that they're asking for a donation, or they're thanking their donors, or they're asking for someone to a team captain can recruit teammates, things like that. So you can create different messages other than the ones that are already in there, or you can edit the donation or the messages that are already in there. So this is similar to how you would have managed editing the autoresponders. You would just click edit and go through the steps on the next screen. And to add a new message, you can just click up here and click this green button that says add a message, and you can create different messages for your participants. So what you need to keep in mind is you don't want to overwhelm people and add too many. So just leave it as a few key crucial emails, but also know that by having the blank message option, the participants can actually create their own from their participant center. So if they have another email that they want to send for a specific reason, they have the ability to create their own. The other ones are just to be used as a jumping off point. So when you're done in this area, all you would need to do is scroll down to the bottom and click next. You're now in area number 13, which is the Customize Pages area. This is likely going to be the area that you'll spend the most amount of time in while setting up your hike site. These are the pages that you'll see on the front end of your website. This is where you would come to change the text or add pictures or do all of those pretty customizations on the front end of your page. In this area, you'll see that there's actually two tabs across the top of the box. One is called TeamRaiser Pages, and one is called Custom Pages. You'll need to know what both of these are for because they'll impact different pages on your site. The majority of the time, though, you're going to be working with the first one in this box, which is the greeting page. This is your main page, the page that all of your hikers are routed to when they first come onto your site.
The next page is home page. This is what your participants will see as soon as they enter into their participant center. This isn't something that we'll customize often, but you may want to go in there and customize the text. That's entirely up to you. The default personal page and the default team page are the pages that your hikers themselves are assigned when they join up as a registrant on your system. So if you want to create a custom message that automatically becomes the hiker's personal page until they change the page themselves, those are the pages that you would do. We'll take a look at all of these in more depth in a different video series, but for now I'm just giving you a high-end overview of what each of these pages are for. When you click the custom pages, you'll see in this box that we have two different pages. These are linked up to pages on the front end of your site. One is the sponsors and one is the contact us. In the sponsors box page, we have the national sponsors listed. You may want to add the logos of your personal sponsors. That's entirely up to you though. We also have the contact us, which is where we've put your primary hike coordinator. You may choose to add another coordinator or to change this information to something else. That's entirely up to you as well. When you're finished here, just click Save and Next. In the next video tutorial, we'll show you actually how to customize these pages.
So you're in item number 14 now, which is customized event URLs. So this is something that we don't use because you've already been assigned with a URL via a different way. If you use this particular area, what's going to happen is next year when you want to use that same URL, it's not going to be available to you to use. So it's best to leave this blank. And if you want a different URL than the one that you've been created already, talk to the hike coordinator at the CHPCA and we'll create you one because this is not the best area to do it in. Number 2 is closed event redirect URL. This means that if you want to, once the hike has closed, once you're no longer going to be fundraising, you can actually populate in a URL into this particular area, and your participants, when they try and click on the URL for your hike site, will actually be redirected to a specific hike site not a hike site necessarily, but another website that's that you may have populated to show a thank you to your donors or a thank you to your hikers. So this is something that you have the option to do when you've decided to close your event for the year. When you're finished here, all you need to do is click Next. Item 15 is the test drive area. This gives you some options on being able to test your site out a little bit. You can just follow the instructions on some of these areas to do this. Again, it's just an optional thing. You don't actually have to go forward with this, but it is a nice thing to be able to do. So when you're finished here, all you have to do is just click Next. So item number 16 is where you would go to publish your event or unpublish your event. So in the status option, which is number 1, in the drop-down menu, you have a few different options. You can keep your event unpublished, in which case it won't show up online at all. It will be as if it's just a completely dormant site, and it will only be visible once it's been published. Now there are 3 different ways that you can publish your event. So you can have it so that you're accepting registrations only. So this means that the only thing that can be done on your hike site is to have your hikers set up their own accounts. You can do just the opposite and have it so that you're accepting gifts only. So this might be what you want to flip it to after your event is over. If you'd like to continue to still collect donations, you can make it so that nobody can register, but the gifts can still be made online. Or you can do both, which is traditionally and typically what it's going to be set to, because you want people to be able to register and donate simultaneously. The last thing that you can do is flip it to closed. So what this means is that when someone goes onto the site, they'll see that the event is closed, they can't give a gift or they can't make a donation, but it doesn't make the website completely disappear like it does when it's unpublished. The next thing to notice in this particular area is the TeamRaiser entry point. So this is the URL that will allow people to access your site. Now, you've also been created a customized URL, but this is the actual URL for the site. You just know that you can use this one as well. And the other number 3 we don't need to be concerned with, so we're not going to talk about that. And when you're done in this area, all you need to do is click finish.